I'm going to be ranking the 10 best rivalries in college football right now. Starting at number 10, I have Iowa versus Iowa State, the battle for the Cy-Hawk. This is the best looking rivalry trophy in college football, in my opinion. This game is throwback football. This rivalry, it's over the last couple of years, it's turned into defensive dominated games that turn into intense one possession games late in the fourth quarter. Iowa has gotten the better of this rivalry over the last decade, but Iowa State, they've gotten over on the Hawkeyes the last couple of years. And moving forward, it looks like the Cyclones are going to be the better of the two programs, with Iowa trending down under Kirk Ferentz. But this is one of the more underappreciated rivalries in college football right now. At number 9, we have the Holy Roar, BYU versus Utah. This is one of the rivalries that makes college football so great. The state of Utah, you have two schools that are located 50 miles away from each other, and this is a passionate state. Utah, they love their college football, with both of these programs making the move to the Big 12. Last year, this was the most watched this rivalry game has been in 10 years. They brought in over 2 million viewers after dark on ESPN, and it was one of the best games of college football. It had everything that makes rivalry games great: intensity, controversy with the officiating. And over the next couple of years, with how good BYU looked last year and Utah normally being a pretty good team, normally in the playoff conversation, this is a rivalry that slowly is starting to increase in popularity. Not only is it unpopular in the state, but nationally it's gaining more recognition, with ESPN doing a better job putting it in more favorable time slots. And this game just shows that you don't always have to be Alabama versus LSU or a super big brand, although BYU is pretty popular nationwide. They got a huge fan base, a bigger fan base than what you may think. Next up, number 8, South Carolina versus Clemson. This is one of the best in-state rivalries in college football. You have two of the largest universities in the state of South Carolina squaring off for pride and respect. And South Carolina, they treat this event like a spectacle. And throughout the 2010s, Clemson has dominated this rivalry, but South Carolina recently has started to rattle off a couple of wins. They recently had a comeback win last year led by Lenore Sellers, who turned into Superman in the fourth quarter. And moving forward, expect this game to rank a lot higher on this list in the foreseeable future. You have two programs that right now, Clemson, they already are pretty much a sure playoff team every single year. South Carolina, they came really close to getting in. They had an argument. They were debatably the hottest team in college football to end the season with how well Lenore Sellers played during the second half of the stretch. But with how well both of these two programs are recruiting, this game is going to have much bigger stakes in the near future, where maybe the winner ends up getting one of the final playoff spots. Florida State versus Miami, I have it at number 7. This game doesn't mean as much as what it used to in the landscape of college football. Miami has been down over the last 2 decades, and Florida State, they've had a few good runs here and there, but for the majority of my lifetime, this game doesn't have the same aura that it used to in the 90s, when at one point when FSU and Miami took the field, the winner most likely was going to the national championship. But Miami looks like they're on the up with Mario Cristobal. Mike Norvell, he did have this program at one point at 13-0, conference champions. They got snubbed from the playoffs. there's an opportunity for him to recapture that magic eventually. I still believe in him. But despite neither one of these programs being as good these last couple of years, when these two teams are able to keep it competitive and they're not getting blown out, this is a pretty good game. I think that it's hard hitting. It's very emotional. You see players that often get unsportsmanlike conduct penalties in this game. Florida State versus Miami, to me, still is the game that decides the state of Florida. When I think of the best rivalry in Florida, the game that comes to the front of my mind is FSU versus Miami, not FSU versus Florida. That's just my opinion. I know you guys are probably going to disagree with me, but hey, that just is what it is. USC versus Notre Dame, the battle for the Jewel Shillelagh. I have it at number 6. This rivalry, it has a mystical feel to it because it's a lot of history and pageantry between these two programs. They have the highest amount of NFL players drafted out of any rivalry duo in college football. They have 24 combined national championships, 15 combined Heisman Trophy winners. Both, you can say, are super hated for some reason. The media, a lot of fans of college football don't seem to like neither one of these programs, but this game just has a really royal feel about it. When you watch this game, it just feels like a soccer event somewhat. It just feels grandiose. It's just something special about this game when you watch it, especially when it gets played on NBC. I feel like NBC does a really good job of broadcasting these Notre Dame games. Like, it's not Notre Dame football if it's not on NBC. And it's just this rivalry. Without it, because I know Colin Cowherd and a few other folks say that this rivalry should go away. Without the USC Notre Dame rivalry, there is no college football. College football is not the same without this rivalry. It's not always about records all the time. Sometimes when you watch the game, you just have to appreciate the history and appreciate the pageantry. Number 5, starting out my top 5, I have the Iron Bowl, Alabama versus Auburn. Alabama has gotten the better of this matchup, and Auburn hasn't been on the same level as Alabama for over the last 14 years. It hasn't really been that close, but the best Auburn has been was when they had Gus Malzahn. They were able to get a few over on Nick Saban, but overall it hasn't really gone Auburn's way in this game. Auburn still has been able to put up some good fights. 2 years ago, it took a prayer from Jalen Milroe to Isaiah Bond to keep their championship hopes alive that year. But this is a game that when it gets played, for the most part, when it's competitive, it's hard hitting, it's really physical. You just feel like it's a rivalry game when you tune into the Iron Bowl. And growing up, when I first got into college football, I remember the kick six. And that's one of the moments that really made me a huge fan of college football. I guess you can say I'm somewhat of a SEC fanboy. This is the conference that I grew up watching the most, other than the Pac-12. But the Iron Bowl is just one of those rivalries where if you just appreciate college football, then you just appreciate this game. It kind of has a similar feel, not quite like Michigan, Ohio State, but a little bit there. It's like, if you don't win this game, it's just a huge disappointment on the season. But because Auburn has been down for so many years, you kind of just expect that you got no shot to win this game. But Auburn has the ability to be on the same level as Alabama. That's what's crazy about it. will they ever be able to maximize all those resources and facilities that they have? Time will tell. Number 4, Alabama comes in again. Alabama versus LSU. This rivalry is featuring two of the powerhouses of the SEC. When you talk about programs that consistently pump out NFL players year after year, normally are in the conversation for the national championship. LSU has the ability to win national championships consistently. It's just the coaching hasn't been there always, but they've had a few years where they've popped off, especially that 2019 team. And when these two teams play, I know this past season Alabama completely destroyed LSU, but Brian Kelly got one over on Nick Saban with Jaden Daniels one time, and that's when he had Bryce Young. So it's not like this rivalry has been completely one-sided, but I feel like this game is about to become a little bit more interesting. With Kalen DeBoer, we don't really know what to expect from this program moving forward, and LSU, with what they've been doing in the transfer portal and recruiting lately, it's about time for Brian Kelly and the Tigers to make a run, and possibly they start turning the tides in this rivalry. At number 3, I got the Army-Navy game. This game represents everything that's great about college football. A game like Army-Navy is more than just football. It's a game that celebrates the people that protect our country, and it's more so of a game that's tailored to a specific audience. And that's what makes college football special. The regionality of these games. And the Army-Navy is so special that it gets played on its own individual week. It never should change. It always should be played in that kind of environment. The cold weather, the snow, that's just the kind of weather that you envision when you think of the people who protect our country. It kind of gives me war vibes. I like watching the Army-Navy game when I'm able to catch it. If not, I always make sure that I watch the highlights. It's fun watching the triple option. Of course, when they get a few passing plays here and there, it's fun to watch because it's like, oh, they finally completed the pass. But I just like this game because it's one of those rivalries that makes college football great. It's random. It's about regionality. It's tailored to its own specific audience. But if you're a diehard fan of college football, you love this rivalry. You understand what it means to this game. Number 2, we got the Red River Rivalry. Both of these two programs flat out hate each other, and it feels like Texas should have more wins over Oklahoma than what they've had over these last couple of years, but Oklahoma has been the better of these two programs. But it seems like Texas gets the spotlight more than what Oklahoma does for some reason. But this is the second best rivalry in college football to me, because when both of these two programs are at their best, this is a very good game. And this is, if it wasn't for the game that we have at number 1, it probably would be the best one in college football. But it's just, the game that we have at 1 just has higher stakes than what Oklahoma and Texas has. And before we get to number 1, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we drop new content. So the best rivalry in college football, coming in at number 1, is Michigan versus Ohio State. When they call this rivalry the game, the name really lives up to its reputation. Over the last couple of seasons, this game has felt like it's had the weight of the world on the line. The winner ends up winning the national championship, or at least having the opportunity to compete for it. And the loser, they either have an outside chance getting into the playoffs and their season ends in disappointment. And even if the winner does win a national championship, it just doesn't feel right not winning this game. This game isn't as big as the national championship, but it just has so many implications in it. Just with the hate, the animosity between the two fan bases. And I want you guys to think about something. Last year, Michigan's season was on the brink of being a massive disappointment until they won this game. This game, for Sharon Moore being able to win it, shifted the entire narrative about how he was perceived and how the direction of the program was viewed with him taking over this squad from Jim Harbaugh. Now you have more buy-in when it comes to the NIL back end. You got more recruiting momentum. They're now prioritizing the transfer portal a lot more. They also use this momentum from the win they got in this game last season, and they carried over to them clobbering Auburn in the ReliQuest Bowl. Ohio State, Ryan Day, his biggest bugaboo has been his inability to win this matchup. And this game really hits different with him not being able to win it. And it's to the point where some fans might want him fired just because he just can't win this game alone. And that just tells you how much this game means in college football. No other fan base is screaming for their coach to get fired who consistently wins at least 10 games, 2 losses every single year, but one of those 2 losses comes in this rivalry. It just means more. That's why they call it the game.